Hey, what's going on? Welcome back to After Prison Show. I can't honestly tell you how good it feels to say that and also to share this video that I'm getting ready to with you. This is truly a very special time in my life, a time that I never even thought would ever happen, but it has. And I'm here today to tell you all about it. Footnote real quick. This is a story time video, and I've done a million story time videos here on After Prison Show. And, you know, I never take notes when I do a video because I always feel like it's just too much pressure unless I'm reading from a script, which I've only done that once. The Dateline parody we did here many years ago. That was the only time I ever read from a script. But anyways, anytime I take notes for a video, I always mess it up. And I always deviate from them notes and never even really mention anything that I noted. I want to try to share from these notes. I do. This is going to be one of the best story times I hope that you ever hear. I've fancied myself in the past as a pretty good storyteller, oftentimes thinking I can be somewhat comical. Anyways, I don't think I'm going to include any comedy with this. This is going to be a really good story time, short of it. So I'm pretty sure I've titled this video, I'm a Father Now, After Prison. I'm also sorry it took me so long to update all of you, but judging by the title, I hope this is a video you will find that was worth the wait. I'm also hoping the audio on this is good as well. I'm recording this in stereo. I've got two brand new microphones recording right and left. Usually I would just use one. Anyways, I'm really trying to step up the production. So here begins some more effort with that. The last video I shared with you was a few days ago. And in that video, I mentioned that it was that day I was anticipating, that was Sunday, I was anticipating I was about to become a father. Again, that day. It's been since Sunday. It's now Thursday, 5 days separated. Joe, what has taken place? Well, again, by the title, you know, spoiler. I've had a son. He is beautiful. I am so proud to be the father of this baby boy. I can't wait for you to see him. He's beautiful. The most precious gift and a miracle baby, truly. Let's go ahead and veer off of the notes real quick. This was something that I wanted to note. I just didn't. I think back throughout the course of After Prison Show. After Prison Show has been around since 2015. December of 2015, and maybe it was January by this point. If you look back to the earliest video, I think the original video was from December 2015, which has since been deleted. But throughout the course of After Prison Show, what are we talking? That's 8 years almost. 7. I think how many videos I've shared here, it's probably like 3 or 4, talking about I'm about to be a father, we're pregnant, our IVF journey, my wife and I. And I also think about any and all previous mentions of me becoming a father and how that never worked out. For those of you who don't know, my wife and I have struggled with infertility, a word that, you know, I didn't know much about until we became familiar with it about 4 years ago. My wife and I would learn that, you know, we couldn't have kids. Or if we were going to have kids, it was going to be very hard for us to have kids. So we went down this crazy path called in vitro fertilization. A very expensive path, and a path that for a lot of people it works, but also for a lot of people it doesn't. And my wife and I were perfect examples of the latter for 4 years, and also 4 failed IVF attempts. 4 rounds. At an unbelievable cost every round, anywhere between $10,000 to $25,000 to put it in perspective. 4 failed rounds. Every time we went down this path, my wife would get pregnant, and then the pregnancy would not last. She would miscarry for one reason or another. And crazy enough to mention, that other reason seems to be the fact that we were dealing with one fertility clinic that just wasn't it, Chief. We would attempt, to have a child 4 different times with this first fertility clinic, and then it wouldn't be until the 5th time at a brand new fertility clinic to us, first time it worked. That in a nutshell is our journey. Joe, what the hell does any of this got to do with prison? Or after prison at that? Well, it is, my life after prison. And what I'm getting ready to share with you, this story of us having Liam, my son who was just born recently, is going to kind of relate a little to what it's like being in prison. And I know I want to stop right here, nip it in the bud before the comment. I'm talking like a dad already. Let's go ahead and nip that in the bud. Before the comments come saying this is going to be cliche or anything like that. There probably wouldn't actually be any comments saying that. Look, this will not be cliche. Oh, God, you just had a kid. 18 years. Boy, that's a life sentence you got right there. That is actually quite a realistic comparison, except such an amazing, awesome life sentence. So long as it's a kid that you want with somebody you want a kid with. I've watched Maury Povich and also Jerry. I had no idea what my wife and I would go through since Sunday, my last time sharing with you how prison-like all of this would be. And today in this story time, you'll see exactly what I mean. I've seen comments since the last video that I uploaded, and that video was titled What Happened to the Podcast and how I messed that up and all of that jazz. But it was in that video where I was mentioning, hey, kind of a big deal. My wife and I were expecting our son to be born today. Matter of fact, I'm filming this video. I'm going to edit this, get this uploaded, and then we're off to the hospital so my wife can become induced to go into labor. Oh, how naive we were at what honestly lie in wait for my wife and I, most especially my wife. As I begin this, I want to take a moment and address the sponsor of this video. I'm totally kidding. Say, my wife. All the praise goes to her and God. But the utmost respect to my wife for what she has endured. And to be honest, what any woman endures, birthing a child. Something I know no man could ever and should never do. What? December the 18th. Sorry, I had to look on my calendar for the date. December the 18th, my wife was scheduled to go into the hospital for induction. We had a date. Now, there was no time for her to do this. In fact, it was all based upon available bed space. She was told by the doctor during her last visit that you need to call around 3 or 4 o'clock to check on available bed space. Well, long after I filmed the last video that I shared with you, my wife would end up doing that, only to be told that there was no available bed space. And hey, call back later or we'll call you back. What does that even mean? My wife was 40 and 5. I didn't even know what that meant. But she was 40 weeks and 5 days pregnant. They say anything after 41 weeks is dangerous, which I didn't know. And maybe many of you didn't either. So you can imagine that from that phone call on, the stress began and would not let up for quite some time. My wife would call back around 5 or 6, only to be told, hey, we'll call you back. We don't got no bed space. We told you that at 3 o'clock. But by around 7:45, 8 o'clock in the evening, the hospital would call and say, hey, if you can get here by 9, we've got a bed for you. And that's what we did. We packed it up and we hauled ass to the hospital, fully anticipating that, maybe by midnight my son would be born. We get into the hospital. We've got a room. We've got this maternity ward is where we were housed at. That was our cell block, so to speak. We had to check in, go through orientation. A few initial comparisons to the whole prison thing that you'll see quite a bit more of throughout this. But our cell, which it certainly was not that. It was a suite. It was a very sweet suite at that. Where my son was born at is a hospital called Centera Lee. They are the #1 hospital in this area for maternity. If you're going to have a baby in Tidewater, Virginia, you're having that baby at Centera Lee. That's what every mother is going to tell you who's had a child there. And after our experience there, I will certainly attest to that. This was an amazing hospital, even with the trials and tribulations that we would endure throughout this process. We got checked into our room. It was a really nice room, very comfortable. You know, I'm able to stay in there with my wife. I've got a bunk. My wife's got a bed. I've got a bunk. We were cellies. We certainly were. And it really was like a little prison bunk where I was sleeping at. It was actually almost a little more uncomfortable than a prison bunk. But it certainly brought me back to being in prison for the simple fact that I can remember all the back pain that I had laying on one of them little cots, them little bunks, them mats. Oh God, my back hurts just thinking about it. But nothing like a prison cell outside of the fact that me and my wife were kind of like cellies, and we were locked in this room for days, and I had a bunk, and there were trays and also visitation. It was a lot like being in prison. Guards, contraband. Yeah. We get checked in Sunday evening. We're in our cell, our suite. Eventually, they would begin administering medicine to my wife that is supposed to induce labor. That's what you go here to do. If you're not going into labor, they need to make you go into labor. And I would learn that there's a number of different ways that they go about doing so. There was one medication that they began with on my wife that is supposed to soften things up and to help the birthing process to be somewhat easier. But judging from the sounds that I would hear in that maternity ward from all of the mothers who were there having babies, certainly didn't sound like anything was soft about that birthing process. It actually sounded like a murder taking place, if you ask me. They began with this medication to soften things up for my wife. And this medication was administered once every 4 hours, and then they would have to check to see if it was working. And, there would be a nurse who said that it was and a nurse who said that it wasn't, and we needed to continue with that. And so begins a little bit of confusion that was thrown into all of this. And trust me when I tell you, there's much more of that. After that medication, they wanted to get my wife onto another medication that is supposed to help induce contractions. But they wanted to be careful with this because my wife was not dilated anywhere near where she needed to be in an effort to be able to push out our son. The first medication, it was working. Maybe it's working, a little confusion there. And then they began the next medication, which is supposed to start inducing the contractions. And they were hoping that the combination between these two would help to also induce the dilating process. My wife went through this from Sunday evening all night. We didn't sleep at all Sunday night, all the way through Monday entirely, the entire 24 hours of Monday, and then all the way until Tuesday, almost midday. Now, mind you, by the time we got through Monday, the pain was so severe for my wife, she had to get an epidural or a spinal tap, or maybe the epidural turned into a spinal tap. There was talk of, and I missed this because I had to leave. I had to walk out of the room because to administer this epidural in the spine of my wife, there was, the anesthesiologist and then nurse, and this thing was getting kind of chaotic. I was almost about to pass out, and I wasn't doing so hot. So I had to step out of the room for a moment. When I stepped back in, my wife was numb completely and freaking out. Now, I didn't hear this mentioned, but, there was mention that we kind of went too deep with the needle, which could really paralyze you. That's the worst thing that could happen if they do something like that. So, my wife's already numb from the chest down. They told her they went too deep a little bit, and she's freaking the fuck out. I'm trying to calm her down. Hey, look, you're just overreacting. It's going to wear off. And eventually it did wear off. Throughout all of this, this is Monday night. We're deep into this induction process. And Monday night was horrendous. We already didn't sleep Sunday night. Now Monday night we're not sleeping because my wife thinks she's paralyzed. There's a lot of back and forth that's taking place between me and the nurses at this point because we're talking about 3 different things that we're gonna do here. Okay, she's not dilated. We're gonna stick a balloon in there and blow that joint up that way, And then I don't know about a balloon. Another nurse would say, and I'm like, yo, who is making these calls? So I was definitely voicing some frustration to 1 or 2 of the nurses. One of our nurses actually quit on us because of that frustration, I think. And I was not being disrespectful at all. I don't want this to come across as I'm like, you piece of I wasn't doing anything of the sort. I am completely concerned for my wife and the well-being of her and our child, because I'm freaking out at this point. My wife is thinking things are going wrong. She is miserable. We're not sleeping. This dilation induction process is not working. All the while, there was, I don't want to say plan B because that's a horrible analogy to use. There was plan C, which was C-section. And that would be one of the last things that I said to the nurse that quit on us before she actually did quit. I said, let me ask you this. If my wife says right now she wants a C-section, what happens? She says, well, they'll give her a C-section, but a C-section is dangerous. They would tell my wife a lot. I don't want to call it misinformation. They would tell my wife a lot of different opinions. I'm frustrated thinking and voicing this saying, we're talking about putting a balloon in there to blow things up, and then you don't know anything about the balloon. I'm like, yo, who the hell is making these calls? And they're like, well, it's the doctor. We're just following the doctor's orders. And, they're trying to talk to me like, they're frustrated with me. But let me tell you this. It's the doctor's orders, and the doctor's orders are based on what the nurses are feeding to the doctors. Hey, how things going in there? Well, X, Y, and Z. Okay, well, based off of X, Y, and Z, what you said, nurse, here's how we're going to proceed. I know it probably sounds like I'm blowing things way out of proportion like I've probably done countless times in the past here on After Prison Show. But trust when I tell you I'm not. Nah. Monday. No, actually it's Tuesday morning by this point. It's probably 2 o'clock in the morning, Tuesday morning. 12 o'clock was the epidural epidemic, and by 2 o'clock, it's starting to wear off, and my wife is starting to regain feeling in her legs, and, she's calming down. And mind you, think about this, freaking out, all this additional stress on my wife. Why the hell wouldn't we just do the damn C-section? 2 o'clock in the morning, they come to check my wife. Mind you, she had been 1 centimeter a week prior to induction. By the time induction was to take place, she was 2 centimeters. She never progressed from 2 centimeters no matter what. But Tuesday at 2 o'clock in the morning when the nurse came and checked my wife, she said, oh my God, you were 5 centimeters dilated. It is working. Looking dead at me because I'm, I guess, the pessimist in this situation, questioning everything that the nurses are doing. Hey, I'm the concerned father-to-be here, okay? 5 centimeters, Dad. We were ecstatic. I felt like the biggest piece of shit. God, I tend to wear that hat. A shitty one at that. I sat with that all night from about 4 o'clock in the morning. Actually, not all night. For only about 3 more hours. Because by 7 o'clock, it was shift change. Sort of like they do in prison. Actually, 7 o'clock is shift change in prison. Now that I think about it, they work 12s. Just like guards, the nurses do. By 7 o'clock shift change, the midwife came on and bless this woman. And also bless all of these nurses as well. No matter how all of this is going to sound that I'm sharing with you, bless all of these folks. Because they were all doing the best that they could. The midwife comes on and she's going to check my wife. And she's also hearing about how the night went and, the frustrations I'm having and the little clapbacks that I'm having with the nursing staff. And, I'm sure there's some talk of whether or not I'm actually going to make it through the pregnancy versus getting kicked out of this hospital. Transferred, so to speak. 7 o'clock, the midwife comes on. She's hearing our complaints. She's trying to reassure us the entire time, and like I said, bless these folks. They were truly amazing, doing the best that they could. She checks my wife for dilation and she says, 5 centimeters. Who told you that? You're still 2. You've always been 2. You certainly didn't go to 5 and then go back down. I don't know if that's a thing. But when this midwife checked my wife and found out that she was 2 centimeters, after we had just been told at 4 o'clock in the morning that she was 5 centimeters, things were progressing and tracking. They're talking about potentially breaking my wife's water to further this process. Once you break the water, you've got 24 hours before you're out of the safe zone. That baby has to be delivered in 24 hours because infection can take place, a high risk of infection. When the midwife realized that the nurse had made a big error. And I also realized this as well. And I'm not like, ha ha, see, I told you. I told you I was right about all of this, and your nursing staff is pretty questionable, which I did not, and I don't think. I just said, you see, this is more of what I'm talking about right here. And I basically said it just like that. Certainly did not want to add stress to my wife in this situation. Certainly was not going to act the fool in this situation. I was only concerned about my unborn child and my wife and their safety. And I'm not going to lie, this number one hospital, I was really beginning to question everything that we had decided in regards to going here. When they told my wife that she was only 2 centimeters dilated and that the nurse was wrong, that's when my wife and we had already been having this discussion. Should we just do the C-section? Our child is not in any imminent danger right this second. But is your body going to be able to do this? Mind you, I've been hearing the murders taking place all up and down, this housing unit. It does not sound good. Is your body going to be able to handle this? I'm not going to lie. I'm going to share something with you that I haven't even mentioned. One of my worst fears in this was that my wife would not be able to survive this. And I don't share that being melodramatic. As somebody who doesn't know, and all that we had to go through in an effort for my wife to even get pregnant and for this pregnancy to work, 5 rounds of in vitro fertilization. Will my wife be able to survive this? I prayed that she would. But what if? Sickening to think. And I wonder if that's a thought that any other father-to-be thinks. Hey, what if my wife or the mother of my child dies during labor? Because that's a thing. That's a thing. Certainly nothing that's unheard of. But anyways, we had already been having the conversation about doing the C-section. By this point, Tuesday morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, a lot of back and forth with the efforts to try to induce labor. My wife certainly did not want to go through another 24 hours of that hell that Monday was for her and, Sunday evening. We said if she decides to because I was going to make this her decision. I couldn't even imagine the fear. They're going to really give you an epidural this time. They're going to really give you a spinal tap this time. You're going to be awake and they're going to be cutting you open and snatching him up out of you. I couldn't imagine. And I was scared to death for her, and I know she was scared to death. She was. If we decide to do this, how soon will it be done? They said we can get her in there at 9:30. It was 7:30 by this point. They gave us some time. She decided, let's do the C-section. From that point, things moved incredibly fast. I was dressed out in, sterile attire. They moved my wife quickly. Our room was literally right next door to the OR where they do this. That was another thing. And real quick, I want to share this. A lot of the back and forth with the opinions. We were told that the C-section was dangerous. We asked the midwife, my wife did. She said, are C-sections dangerous? She said, no. And I don't know if that was an opinion, if that was a comfort thing, but it was certainly a different answer than, yeah, they are. They do this all day, every day. The doctor that was going to perform the C-section came in there and talked with my wife. She's like, and it was a woman. She was like, I've been doing this for 35 years. She was very nice, the doctor who performed the C-section. Everybody was just so nice. Things move fast. We get into the OR. I'm sitting in the hallway. They're getting my wife prepared. They're trying to get the spinal tap going. They're talking about they're having trouble getting that in and how finicky that is. They finally bring me in. Now, mind you, I've been sitting in the hallway for about 10 minutes waiting, and I ain't gonna lie. Some things started coming to my mind. I had spoken with my brother. My brother has a son, about the fact that I was a soon-to-be father, and he says, when you're there when he's born, it's going to be like that scene from that movie Blow when, George Young is shaking, not doing the 10 grams of blow, but you're going to be shaking, you're going to be in a cold sweat, and you're going to feel like you're going to pass out. And show shit, as soon as I got up in there, they got me behind the sheet right there at my wife's head, trying to comfort my wife who is completely incapacitated at this point. And I'm holding her arm And I'm not doing so to comfort her. I am doing so because I'm about to fall face down on the ground. I don't think I can do this. I will never for the life of me forget the smell. As soon as I sat down in there, and it smelled like burnt hair, burning hair, whatever they were doing. Something was burning and it smelled like body parts. And I'm smelling it, and I am going, and I'm doing everything in my power to not pass out. And I literally just had to start breathing through my mouth to not pass out. The last time I passed out was actually in jail when I was getting a TB test. They put that needle in my arm, and the next thing I know, they were waking me up off of the ground with the smelling salt. I could not do this during my child's birth. This is already a high stress situation all the way around the board. I'm not going to be the guy they got to be picking up off of the floor, dragging up out of there so that my son can be born. I'm able to hold it together. I hear a lot of talk. There's a pediatrician right behind me. Hey, I just want to let you know I'm the pediatrician. I'm going to watch over this entire event. Congratulations. I'm not even here. I am like in don't pass out mode. But then all of a sudden, some more chatter. I hear a muffled little cry. And then I hear the doctor say, let's get him to cry a little bit more. And I hear a little pop. And I hear a little cry. And the doctor says, would you like to see your child? I said, just put him right there, because that was the incubator. I did not want them to lower the sheet, me to see my wife's stomach. I said, please just put him right there, kind sir. Please, can you just put him right there? And as soon as he broke the corner and they put him right there going to that incubator or that bassinet right there, whatever it is, I mean, I broke down. I was crying. And anytime anybody would say anything to me, I was crying. And I mean, I'm immediately right there with him. They got me right there with him. And I'm just looking at this miniature version of myself. And I'm trying to look back to my wife like, baby, you did this. Look what you did. You made him. We did it. You did it. And, she's not even conscious. I mean, she is, but she's completely incapacitated. And she just goes to sleep. So I'm doing everything. And I'm answering all of these questions, and they're weighing him. He was 8 pounds, 9 ounces. He was 20¼ inches long. He was born at 10:28 in the morning on December the 20th, 2022. And let me just stop this story real quick to share with you another prison comparison. Do you know how significant the birth of my child is? My beautiful baby boy, Liam Matson Guerrero, born December the 20th, 2022. If we rewind time back to 2008, December 20th, 2008, it was on that day that I would end up getting arrested, not knowing it at the time, but arrested to then serve the 7 years in prison that I would. That would ultimately lead to me getting released, starting AfterPrisonShow, and being where I am right here, right now, sharing what I'm sharing with all of you. You talk about a story coming full circle. You talk about a date that was so significant in my life previous for a negative reason that turned into actually quite a positive thing. And you fast forward 15 years later, on that very same day, my wife gives birth to our firstborn and potentially our only child. What a miracle baby he truly is. For the first hour and 45 minutes of my son's life, it's just him and I. And the nurse, Jan. She was exceptional. And I need to say this too. There was so much that took place after the birth of my son that let me know just how serious that whole 5 centimeters versus the 2 centimeters that my wife really was. How serious that whole situation really was. We would end up with the top nursing staff at the hospital after that blunder. At least that's what it felt like. And Jan, our nurse, during the delivery of my son, oh my gosh, she was amazing. I have no idea what to do. Swaddle him. What? Do chest to chest, skin to skin. You need to take your shirt off. And so I'm the first voice my son heard. And I hope that is a voice that he will never forget and will always know as his father. And will always know that's a voice that will do anything to give him the best shot at life and the best life that he could possibly ever have. He will want for nothing. And I will certainly make sure of that. If I was motivated to succeed in the past, prior to fatherhood, I didn't even know what life was, like my wife said, till he was born. I didn't know what motivation was. That first hour and 45 minutes while my wife was in recovery, and she was right there. It's me and Liam and my wife right there. And I'm trying to tell my wife, oh my God, look at him. Look how beautiful he is. It would take an hour and 45 minutes before my wife was able to share in that moment herself. And when she did, to see her look at him, to see that she's realizing she made him, indescribable. There would be a lot of people who would come in and talk to us from the hospital after the birth of my son, explaining the severity of the situation that took place with the misdiagnosing the dilation of my wife, and how that had been ran up the chain of command to the board of directors, and how discipline was going to be imposed. And I said, listen, I surely hope this nurse doesn't lose her job behind, oh, no, but retraining and all. I know that everybody was doing the best that they can in the moment. And I know Monday night, especially after the epidural situation, which probably, in all fairness, was just as bad as if not worse, than saying that my wife was more dilated than she actually was. I know that there was a lot of confusion in that moment, but you are a nurse, and that's what your job is to handle high-stress situations. I was not mad at that particular nurse. In fact, that particular nurse was a very nice lady. And, it was unfortunate whatever happened. I told my wife, I said, she probably ended up getting fired. This is the #1 hospital in this area. You think they're going to let that slide? Nah. But I certainly voiced the fact that I did not wish that to happen, nor was I going to sit there and leave. When they came and they talked with us, I truly feel like they were sincere in their apology to us for how stressful the situation had been up until the birth of our child. And they wanted to do everything in their power to make the remainder of her time in the hospital as comfortable as it possibly could be. And they did so. They truly did so. I have no qualms. I have no gripes with this hospital. Things like that probably happen. Mistakes get made, but in a hospital setting, that's probably the last place you want to see mistakes getting made. Could have ended up a lot differently, and had it ended up a lot differently, who knows what that could have entailed and also led to. But I was grateful for the fact that the hospital owned it, as they said. And, all that matters is that my son was born safe, healthy, and he's here now. And he's also home. After my son was born, my wife was able to actually eat solids, because the entire time leading up to the birth of my son, they had her on a liquid diet. She was getting trays. Yeah, she was. It was a lot of chicken broth and ramen noodle seasoning packs and Jell-O, little salt packs. Meanwhile, I'm coming and going. Damn the light. I knew I was on a race against time to beat the battery on that one particular light. That just kind of kills the mood and lets me know it's time to hurry up and wrap this show on up. My wife's on this liquid diet. I'm going out to the car, trying to smuggle in the pack, trying to smuggle the contraband in, which I was able to do so quite easily, actually. Sneaking some shit out of the chow hall, so to speak. But, she didn't eat none of that. She did what she was supposed to do, what they told her to do. You're on a liquid diet. I brought it just in case. Hey, if you want to bend the rules a little bit, what's a Pringle going to hurt? When my son was born, they moved us to an afterbirth room to make room in what we were in initially, which was a labor room. And the afterbirth room was just as nice as the birth room. We got transferred to a different housing unit. Literally, it was a totally different ward. Not maternity, but it was critical decision unit. The critical decision unit? Yeah, sounds pretty serious, but that's where critical decision, yeah, that's where she was at. Amazing room, amazing staff. People came and checked on us continuously. And during that night that we spent in that room, that was Tuesday night after the birth of my son. We wouldn't leave the hospital until Wednesday evening. But Tuesday night was our first night with our son. He slept right there in the little bassinet, or he didn't sleep at all. And neither did my wife and I. But all through the night, I'm on the couch in my bunk, and my wife is in her bunk. And my wife and I were just chopping it up, just talking about all sorts of just different shit. And I can't tell you enough how much that really felt like we were cellies that night, just shooting the shit to pass the time. Because there was nothing else that we could do. We knew we weren't sleeping because Liam was up all night, which was fine. It was his first day in the world. I don't care if he stays up every night. My child is literally 3 days old today. He's only slept twice since he's been born. I mean, well, he's only lived through 2 nights. My wife and I, we chopped it up. We talked about all sorts of shit. They would come around with trays. And, in some cases, prison probably feeds you better. My wife even said people in prison are probably eating better than this. But let me just tell you, I don't know what kind of misconceptions there are about hospital food and that shit being bland. But at this particular hospital, my wife had spiced apples with cream. My wife had chicken, like a chicken with a mustard sauce on it. Oh boy, it reminded me of a chicken tray in prison for real. I said, this is a Sunday special right here. But it was way better than that. I mean, she had a little quiche for breakfast one morning. Pork loin. Open-faced roast beef sandwich. That was the meal that was coming on Wednesday night. And she almost wanted to stay just for the dinner. But we had to get our son home. It was time to go by Wednesday night. 5 o'clock Wednesday, show was over. We had made it. Liam was here, and it was time for us to go home. He did everything that he needed to do. They did all of the checks. And by 5 o'clock Wednesday, we was rolling up out of there. We was getting released. B&B! This is so... Liam! Hey, Liam! You're getting released today. Free Liam! Let me not wish that or knock on wood for that situation at all. I wasn't really trying to incorporate any jokes with this. This was a very serious situation, what my wife and I went through. I'm sorry it took me so long to be able to share this video with you. I am grateful it took this long for me to be able to share this video with you. I saw comments that said, oh my God, he hasn't uploaded. Like, that's scary. And let me tell you, between Sunday evening and Tuesday up until 10:28 in the morning, it fucking was. I want to give a very special shout out to the hospital staff. These people were as professional and as amazing as they possibly could have been. In terms of the dilation and 5 centimeters versus 2 centimeters, it was an honest fuck up. I hope it didn't cost this nurse her job. We were not making a mountain out of a bigger mountain with this situation. It was only further guidance for us to determine what we needed to do for our family. Because ultimately, when you're in a hospital, it's a lot of decisions that need to be made by the people who are in that hospital. Nursing staff, doctors, anybody, they can give you a lot of diagnoses and, medical opinions. But ultimately, you got to be the one to decide. Our son was not breached. Our son was not, facing the wrong direction. Our son was not in distress. What if we didn't move forward the way that we decided to do? Would that have put our son in a stressful situation? He needed to come out, and that was the way that we felt it was best for him to do so. And you know what? I'm glad that he's here, and I'm glad that he's safe, and my wife is safe. And I'm glad to get, the opportunity to share with you all of this. I don't know if I've included any pictures along with this story. Maybe I have, or maybe I haven't. But what I want to let you know is, over on my other YouTube channel, Joe Does Stuff, there's a vlog of all of this that I've shared with you. And whether you've seen that video first to see this video, or you see this video first to see that video, these two videos go hand in hand together. And I would encourage anybody who found enjoyment and entertainment out of this unbelievable, miraculous, feel-good story to go check out the other video as well. Go take a look at my son. He is precious, and I am so proud of him. I've got a lot of questions in regards to what he'll think of me when he's able to see these videos. But I truly hope that I make him proud. And I truly hope that he realizes that I worked, by that point, as hard as I possibly could in an effort to provide for him the best life that I can. I love that little baby boy so fucking much. And when I saw him, immediately my life changed. And if you thought that I was back before here on After Prison Show, well, I'm back so much more here on After Prison Show because of that little boy. I want to make him laugh. I want to make him enjoy these videos. I mean, not like literally force him to enjoy it, but like I want to make, like, that's how bad I want this content to kick ass. So if we go back to that first video where I said, hey, I'm back, I'm coming for the top, I don't care who got the throne, I'm taking it. Yeah, I mean all of that, like a shit ton more. So just wait and see. Hey folks, thanks for allowing me to share this with all of you. I truly hope this was a video you enjoyed, and if it was so, please leave a like and a comment, letting me know exactly what you thought about this. And as always, until next time, enjoy life. Certainly know it's got a whole new meaning for me now. The free world. Never take a moment for granted, and make the most of every day.